Good afternoon. We're Story Collaborative. We are live today and we're going to have a great conversation. I'm Dave Mills, Chief Growth Officer here at Story, and I've got two really attractive people, one to my right and one to my left. I've got the hands confused because of backwards video. Introduce yourselves, folks.
Hey, Amy Alexander here, Creative Director.
Hi, I'm Chad Alexander. I wish I was the cheese growth officer, but I'm not. I am the growth driven design engineer with Story Collaborative.
Awesome. So we have a great topic today. Amy, why don't you introduce our topic?
Sure, so I just finished a guide called So You Inherited a Website, and it's basically how you can become a kick ass website owner. Because when you inherit someone else's monster baby, it can be extremely overwhelming and extremely painful. So it's a really great guide. But from that, there's really 10 places you can start. And so I thought it might be nice just to walk through, like, where do you start if you inherit a monster baby? What's something you can do right now, this very second, like while you're watching this video? How can you make headway and momentum in that overwhelming process? So the first one's going to be research your CMS. Guys, what's a CMS?
Well, it's a content management system, and so the first advice, if you've inherited, and you've called it a monster baby, so I'm assuming that what you mean is that it reminds me of like one of those old classic Rosemary's Babies movies, where you have this thing. It's a website that someone else developed, and they've given it to you, and it's now yours. Oh boy, oh goody. But you're saying the first thing you should do is figure out what kind of CMS you have, content management system. That's assuming you have a CMS, content management system, at all. But that's the first place is figure out what you got.
Yeah, so a content management system. I mean, if your website is just a series of code, a content management system is what lets you get in there and like it makes let the average person make edits, like upload images, do a little bit of design changing, right? So in the mid-sized business arena, it's probably going to be WordPress or HubSpot. There's more about that in the guide, but the first thing you should do, research your content management system. Um, so Chad, can you tell us the difference between hosting and a domain registrar? It's okay if you can't. It's not really your.
That would be incredible if I could.
Okay, so Chad,
I take care of the websites after they're done, guys.
yeah, you've never had to be on the back end of hosting a site. So you may or may
No,
not know this, but a
thank goodness.
domain registrar is where you get your URL from. If you are, uh, you know, gold managers of Virginia, I don't know, .com. um, that's your URL. So you bought that from a domain registrar. Where you're managing that is your domain registrar. Your hosting, remember guys, files are on a physical server. They do not exist in some kind of weird ethereal cloud space. The cloud is actually a physical server with actual files in data in some warehouse. And that is your hosting vendor.
And so your DNS, your domain registration, is handled by a registrar. So that's where you buy it from. But sometimes you might even have somebody else who actually manages your names, your DNS, your dedicated name servers, which manage and tell the internet how to be careful you don't break the internet, by the way. They tell you how tell the internet how to find you and where you are. And so you have a registrar that you pay that $12 a year to, and then they may also provide DNS management, dedicated name server management, or you might have your DNS somewhere else. And the DNS will also point the internet, or the interweb as they call it, to the hosting servers, which Amy has aptly pointed out are not just the cloud. They're actually a co-location facility somewhere with gigantic data servers locked behind a cage with lots of air conditioning and really smart guys who have pocket protectors who manage them.
Wow, that was quite a stereotype. Just kidding. That's right. So you, as the website owner, you have got to get access to all of these admins, right? You need to make sure that you can log in, you yourself from your computer without help. You can access your domain, your DNS stuff, your hosting. At some point, you're going to need access to this. Some of you may have a tech guy who's managing some of these details, and that's fine too, as long as someone is managing it. And since you're here and since you're in charge, you might as well set up some kind of system for how these passwords are going to get, long-term stored, so that when your tech guy leaves or when you leave or whatever, there's a really great system in place for managing these things. We never want it in here, right? That's terrible. So number 3, back in the day, you could access websites with no SSL certificate. It was very normal. And unless you were doing some kind of e-commerce, you probably didn't need one or have one. But in today's age, you have to have an SSL certificate. What is that, Dave?
An SSL certificate refers to secure socket layer. So what's happening is the person who's visiting your website wants to know if it's really you, or perhaps it's someone in some other country who's pretending to be you. And so what's happening with the SSL is that the hosting server is guaranteeing with the browser, and they're talking to each other to make sure that when I'm talking to Chad.com, it's actually Chad.com and not Chadinsky.com, who's masquerading as Chad. And it's a way of helping me not to feel so nervous about who I'm talking to. If I get in between the user and the host, I can pretend I'm someone else. I can spoof that, and I can actually get them to give me all their information. But the SSL lets you know that it won't happen. And if we know there's an SSL because there's a little lock symbol up in the browser bar where the URL is.
That's exactly right. Great. So the next thing you really could do right now, is you could go find a free SEO tool, something that kind of looks at broadly how is your website, what's some kind of arbitrary score that it's going to give you. It will give you some immediate insight into what could potentially be going wrong. Chad, as far as SEO, what kinds of things might be top of the list when one of these free tools is reviewing your website?
Sure. And let me just back up just a little bit and kind of give them an idea of the different kind of audit tools. There's Google Search Console. We also use GT Metrics to kind of give a broad picture of the entire website, and it's going to look for things like you have duplicative meta text on different web pages. You don't have a canonical URL. You don't have meta in these pages. Your images are missing alt text. You have multiple H1 tags, things like that are very specific to the structure of your website pages.
And we actually have a free tool. This is tool day. I don't know. At the end of this, we're going to have to link like 5 or 6 links because there's just a ton of tools that we have. We have a free website creator tool, which will give you some SEO insights. So we'll make sure we link that.
And actually, they can get that, Amy. They can get that tool. They go to our website, which is story-collaborative.com. At the footer, there's a little spaceship. You'll see in the footer. That's where the free tool is that you can get a quick score on your SEO, and it'll tell you right away whether you're doing really good or not so good.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave.
Can I be like that guy on Lego and yell spaceship? The Lego guy wants to build a spaceship the entire movie. You remember that in the movie? That was fun. Anyways,
I don't remember
We
that.
obviously have small children.
I don't remember that at all.
oh, it's great.
It's
Anyways,
fun. So while we're on analytics tools, another thing you really need access to, and tools, we have an entire list of access, like the top things you need access to. It's very long. The marketing director, so that's another tool you can snag from us. But you got to get into your Google Analytics. If you don't have one set up, this is the time you want to find out, because you really want to get that on your website. But there's a high probability, kind of at mid-business size and up, that Google Analytics is already on your website. You can only hope, but you want to make sure you have access. That's super important. Why is it that we use Google Analytics as long-term benchmarking tool, guys.
Well, one reason is that the Google algorithm is a top secret. It's like this. It's like the batter on Kentucky Fried Chicken. We don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. So what's happening is, since we can't predict how Google will behave because Google is crazy and secret, what we do is we have to have after the fact measurements. And so Google Analytics allows us to see after the fact what is going on with our pages, with how long, what the dwell time on the website is, the bounce rates, exit rates, all that stuff. Now, and by the way, we rely very heavily on HubSpot's analytics for measuring websites, which is much faster. And the redesign in Google Analytics, you need to have it, but I'll just tell you, it's not your friend, and it's going to be hard to read. So we really lean on HubSpot simply because it's much easier to read, it's more consistent, and we actually think it has some better measurements than Google Analytics. So, and you can get actually, if you reach out to us, we can set you up with that for free. You can get a free account at HubSpot, and we can help you install it. So just reach out, ask Chad, he'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be happy to. Well, and one thing I want to add to that, Dave, I think you brought up a good point with Google Analytics and Google Search Console. They also will kind of throttle traffic as well when they're checking your site. So they'll benchmark it on very outdated hardware for compatibility, even though the hardware could be from 2016, and so it's not indicative of more of your kind of consumer base that's probably has a more recent cell phone than something from, what, several years ago, it seems like now. So that keep in mind as well. Hey, I'll go on to the next one, guys. Uh, Identify your site's most valuable content. And so when you're looking at Google Analytics and you're looking at these different audit tools, kind of assess what's performing well. What is your exit rate on certain pages? What does your traffic look like on certain pages? Where are people converting? And then figure out stuff that isn't working. Does it need to work? Is it on the website and it's just bloating it? Just be really honest with yourself once you gather all these tools. Like, kind of give it a critical assessment of whether or not it's effective.
That's great advice. And I'm going to put up the link once again. We're talking through when you inherit a website, someone else has created it, and it might be wonderful and it might not, but it's now your baby. What do? I'm going to put that link right underneath Amy's face so that you can see how to get the tool. It's very cool.
Or maybe it's right here. Hard to say.
Okay, cool tool.
You can't actually see what's going on. But yeah, so okay, you inherit a website from someone else. Maybe you're the new marketing director, and maybe you have new responsibilities because someone else stepped out. Maybe you got promoted. Let's hope that's why, because that's a fun reason. So what can you do today? You can walk through every single page of your website and find the best and worst experiences. Try to put on your buyer hat, right? Pretend that you're the audience to the best of your ability. Very difficult to do when you're on the inside. If you're brand new to the company, this is a really good time to do it because you're still on the outside a little bit. But walk through, figure out what messaging is to the buyer, figure out what messaging is not, figure out how much your company's bragging about itself, probably too much. And and try and identify like the top 3 great experiences and the top 3 horrible experiences that need to get fixed immediately. So guys, we're doing these things. I don't know if on YouTube you've seen these shorts. Brand new thing, super cool. But the way that we set up our live, we actually can create a short really easily from our lives because we have like these 3 pillars. But what keeps happening to us is that we're like laughing during each other's stuff. And so what could be a really great 60-second soundbite isn't. So when we laugh and then stop ourselves, it's because we're trying really hard to give each other soundbites. Okay.
We
Anyway,
should just add a laugh track in. Just add a laugh track in the entire time, right? And then
That's
problem
true.
solved, right?
So when you're looking at, your best and worst content, as Amy said, you have to put yourself in the buyer's shoes. And can be very hard if you've been in your company for a while, even if you have a new role and you're now the website guru, you you have to get outside of yourself a little bit to begin looking at the website as your buyers do. Because you're going to see things that you're familiar with, about, you think they're important. Your salespeople think they're important, and they might be important to you. But it's really critical that you get outside of your own head a little bit and look at the website as if you're just learning about the product or service, or you're comparing your product and service with other companies. And that's the best way for you to evaluate whether the content on your website is really good or really bad. And then there's another tool that Chad really uses quite a bit to allow us to see what's actually happening on a page, which can be very useful. Why don't you talk a little bit, Chad, about how you look at the flow of behavior on a page to get a better sense of not just my opinion about the quality of that page, but actually what people are doing with it.
Um, I don't know the specific tool you're referring to because I use several.
He's
Well,
talking
I'm
about
talking
hot
You
dog.
about
know,
I'm
there
talking
was
about heat maps. I'm talking about heat maps.
no, yes, yes, yes. Okay, okay. I wanted to make sure. Right.
I
Okay.
was trying to stump
Because you
you.
can, no, no, you're good. You're good. That's what I figure, but I wanted to make sure. Heat maps are very beneficial for a number of reasons. One, you can see where people are clicking. That's always very valuable because people might be clicking on text that doesn't lead anywhere. Maybe it's very interesting and they're hoping that the hyperlink is there. So there's a question there that needs to be answered and you need to pull the thread on that. Secondly, you can also look at it from the perspective of how far are they going down in the page. So if they're only kind of going at the top of the fold, which is the presentation of your um, whatever device you're on, if you're on a phone or tablet, desktop, it's going to show you that screen that's called the fold. And they're only staying right there. There might be some work to be done on that page. And then also, it will also show you. I don't use this one as much, but it'll show you movement where people are hovering. Usually, you're going to get a very good idea of people are going to hover around stuff that looks intuitively like hyperlinks. But it also gathers data like how many clicks, time on page, record people and what they do, if they rage click and that sort of thing. All very good data sets to have.
So before we go on, and by the way, we only have time for maybe one more of the list of 10. But Chad? What's a rage click?
A rage click is when somebody clicks several times in a row, and it'll record that. And they're just for whatever reason they get frustrated. Um, doesn't happen often, but when it does, they'll record it.
So it's kind of like bam, 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 trying to make something happen that's not going to
Exactly,
happen. Okay.
exactly. And
Rage
sometimes it
click.
might be their computer freezing, but that might be an indication that your web page is slow. Could be so.
Good point. So, last thing we'll say today. If you are new to the position or new to the company, in either way, you've inherited this website, there's an amazing opportunity you have to connect and remove the silos between marketing and sales. Now, you're going to have to get your marketing team on board with this because they're probably not going to want to. But the reality is that the sales team has incredible, really important knowledge about your buyer. They have a lot to say about your content strategy. They probably don't even know they do, but there's a lot in here that you've got to get out. And so this is a great time to extend that olive branch and start to work toward that relationship being much more healthy. And what you can do is invite them, as many as will, into a room and ask them to start listing the most common questions they have. That's the very beginning of your content strategy. All right. So we have super good tools for you, an awesome video guided manual. You can see my face a whole bunch more if you want. Sorry in advance. But it's a good tool. So hopefully it will be of use to you guys.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Amy. And once again, the link is right under her chin. And it's a great guide for you to access. Thanks, guys, for this very enlightening. I learned a new word today. I never knew that rage clicking was a thing. Now I do, and I'll try and avoid it.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.